know the argument I'm talking about. We've all been there. You're laying out facts, you've got the data, and then your opponent just hits you with their trump card. Look, it's just common sense. It's designed to shut down the conversation, right? To make you look like the one who's out of touch. We're always told to trust our gut, but common sense is this bedrock of truth. But what if that's not just wrong? What if it's actually a trap?
So here's the core idea, and it's a little jarring. Relying on common sense doesn't make you smart. It actually makes you an easy target, a sitting duck for anyone who knows how to manipulate you. It's the favorite weapon of people who don't have any evidence, because, it doesn't require any. And in this explainer, we are going to take that weapon apart, piece by piece.
Okay, so the big question is, if it's such a dangerous trap, why does it feel so right, so true? Why is that gut feeling so incredibly powerful? Well, to get to the bottom of that, we have to take a look under the hood at how our brains are actually wired.
And that leads us right into our first section, the common sense illusion. This is where we get to the root of the problem. We're going to unpack why our intuition, that feeling we call common sense, isn't a feature. It's more like a bug in our mental software.
It really all boils down to something called mental shortcuts. See, our brains are, well, they're kind of lazy. They're built for speed and efficiency, not for doing deep, complex analysis all day long. So when we're hit with a complicated problem, our brain defaults to the easiest path. We don't weigh the statistical probabilities. We just grab onto whatever feels plausible because it takes way less energy. And history is just littered with examples of how wrong this can go. Take the ancient Egyptians. For them, the common sense explanation for the sunrise wasn't physics or orbital mechanics. Nope. It was that the sun god Ra was in a life or death battle with monsters every single night, and his victory made the sunrise. It made perfect sense to them, and it was completely, utterly wrong. That's what happens when we let our gut feelings write the laws of the universe.
Okay, on to section 2, weaponized simplicity. Because this flaw in our thinking isn't just some harmless little quirk, it's a huge vulnerability. And believe me, there are people out there who actively exploit it to make smart, well-informed people look like total fools. And this is their classic move. Think about the old debate over whether the Earth or the sun was the center of the universe. The common sense argument is so easy, right? Just look up. The sun moves across the sky and we're standing still. Duh. It feels obviously true. But the actual truth, well, that requires a huge, complicated explanation about heliocentric models, gravity, orbital mechanics. And a manipulator knows that a simple lie is always easier for a crowd to digest than a complex truth. The reason this trick works so well is because of a little psychological glitch called the simplicity bias. Our brains are literally hardwired to pick the simple story over the complicated one because it saves mental energy. So a manipulator hijacks this. They offer you the lazy, easy answer, knowing full well that the expert's complicated, factual answer is going to make your brain work harder and you're likely to just tune out. And this brings us to a point that you have to burn into your brain. Popularity does not equal truth. Just because a million people on the internet believe a simple, dumb idea, that doesn't magically make it a smart one. It just means it's a popular, dumb idea. End of story. So, how in the world do we fight back against this? We can't just sit there and take it. We need a strategy. And that brings us to our third section, and the solution, a framework I like to call the complexity shield. It's a really straightforward 3-step process. First, you're going to call out their bad logic. Then, you're going to expose their entire strategy to everyone watching. And finally, you're going to drag them back into the real world, the world of actual hard evidence. Okay, step 1, you have to call them out by name. When they say, that just doesn't make any sense, what they're actually using is a logical fallacy called personal incredulity. All that means is they're arguing that because they find something hard to understand, it must be false. You just calmly point it out. You say something like, look, just because this concept is beyond your gut feeling doesn't make it untrue. Now, step 2 is where the magic happens. This is how you reframe the entire debate. You don't get defensive about having a complex answer. No, you turn their simplicity into a weakness. You say something exactly like this. My opponent is giving you a simple answer because it's easy, not because it's true. If you want the comfortable lie, listen to them. If you want the actual facts, give me 60 seconds. See what that does? All of a sudden, your detailed answer doesn't seem confusing. It seems credible. And finally, step 3. You bring it all home by anchoring the conversation to what actually matters, proof. A nice folksy story is not evidence. A gut feeling is not data.
the burden of proof is still on them, no matter how much common sense they claim to have. So you demand the data, you ask for the numbers, you force them off the fuzzy ground of feelings and onto the solid ground of facts. So we've covered the whole framework, but before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one last thing. Think of it as your ultimate cheat code, the one line that can vaporize a common sense argument on the spot.
Here it is. The next time someone smugly hits you with, "It's just common sense," you can stop them dead in their tracks with this question. It instantly puts their argument in historical context, reminding everyone in the room that today's obvious truth is very often tomorrow's embarrassing mistake.
So I'll just leave you with this final question to think about. When you rely on common sense, are you really thinking for yourself? Or are you just remembering what you've been told is supposed to be obvious? Real thinking, critical thinking, that begins the moment you leave that comfort zone and start demanding proof, not just a plausible story. So stay sharp and don't fall for the simple answer.